Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network. The broadcast shows are for informational and entertainment purposes only. They are not designed to provide listeners with specific personal, medical, or counseling advice. Individuals with a medical issue should always consult their healthcare provider. MS&Me is not responsible for content of individual shows. The views expressed by show hosts or the guests are their own. Enjoy the show.
Hey y'all, and welcome to Straight Up with MS and all its crazy little circles here on MS&Me Radio, brought to you by the MS Global Support Network. I'm your host, Patty Long, and you can find me most of the time on Twitter at MSNit for Life. That's MSENIT, the number 4. LIFE. And y'all, don't hesitate to send me a direct message on there because I will get to those more quickly than anything else. And I have been away a lot this summer, a whole lot this summer, and I apologize for that because it's been a rough one for me. It started out so fantastic, going to the UK and meeting all these cool people and doing this amazing adventure. And then I came back home to the same old, same old. And that was kind of tough. And I guess it's like that whenever anybody goes on a really good vacation. And this was definitely the best of vacations that I went on. And now we've had several losses in the family. Actually started before I went on my trip with Grandpa Red. And, it's crazy because loss seems to come in waves. And yet there's no rhyme or reason. I mean, it's not like everybody plans to die at once or something, but, it has been really bad. The oldest that I lost this year was 99. That was my Aunt Ruthie, and Aunt Ruth was fabulous. She was just this amazing soul, this amazing, beautiful soul, always laughing and just a wonderful person. I can still see her holding her hands together and rocking forwards and laughing. And it's those memories of her laughing and the reasons why she was laughing that will keep it together for me. And so I always try and look for those positives. And she actually was one of the co-founders of the NFB. That's the National Federation of the Blind. Now, this woman was not handicapped. Neither was Grandpa Red, who was also blind. Neither was Rose, who passed away many, many years ago. And she was blind. But they didn't see blindness as a handicap. Why? It wasn't because they couldn't see it. Okay, that's a bad joke. But, they did not feel that they should be treated any differently just because they were blind. And there was so much they could do. And so, like I said, she was 99, and she was a very young woman when her and Red and all these other people decided to form this Association of the Blind. And they chose their name, National Federation of the Blind, because they wanted to pull everybody together. And they did that. And it's grown and grown and grown. But their first meetings were held under an apple tree, an old apple tree. And she used to talk about that old apple tree all the time. So she was the oldest to have passed away. And I got to admit, she didn't have much in the way of possessions, but she had a lot in the way of friends and loved ones. And she did some amazing things with her life. You know, being one of the co-founders of this big organization, that's an amazing thing, especially for back when they started it. And, you know, it was unheard of. This set a precedent in my eyes to, and again, no pun intended, but it did. It set a precedent of what a person can do with their life if they want to. And, you know, I don't consider myself handicapped. I may get a check each month that says I am, but I'm not. You know, I'm very able, very capable of doing many, many things. And talking to y'all is one of those many, many things that I should always be capable of, despite the fact that these things have just been blowing me away, you know. Last week I missed doing the show because, well, I was at Aunt Ruthie's funeral. And sorry, guys, but she topped my show. And she should. You know, there are these kinds of things that happen, and they should come first. You know, if your child is sick, your child comes first. If your mom is sick, your mom comes first. You know, I mean, there's all these different things in life that just happen, and we have no control over them. The property next door to me was purchased, unfortunately, by a group of people who are clear cutting a 4-acre section of woods out, and it's right up against my property line. So I have a mess, and a lot of the trees, as they're knocking them over with bulldozers, are falling onto my property and damaging my trees. And I'm not a real happy camper about my stuff getting damaged. And I'm told, I was actually told this many years ago, that every tree that falls onto my property and damages something on my property, for every tree that gets damaged of mine, that's $1,000 in a lawsuit. Now, a lawsuit's a lot of stress, and I'm not really big on stress. I avoid stress. I've avoided it. I could have won 2 lawsuits now for medical negligence or malpractice or whatever it's called. But I chose not to sue because I cannot handle the stress. The stress will just make my MS so much worse. And I just can't deal with the stress. So, no, I'm not going to sue them, but I am insisting that they get the trees off my property and not just cut them at the property line and take that part that's still on their property. I want them to get the whole tree, and I will be very insistent on that. And, you know, I stay on top of stuff, so I know what's going on down there. And for now, since, you know, we try and make the best of bad situations, I'm using all those fallen trees that are laying across hills, because I live in the hills, and trying to use those as like my balance beam so I can practice walking on the trees and stepping over the little tree limbs or whatever else might be laid across them. Maybe there's another tree going across them and I have to step up and over it. So I've been doing that, and that's made it a much more fun situation for me than just staring at this clear-cut piece of property, 4.5 acres almost of woods, thick forest, whatever you might want to call it, and it's just gone. And one of the things that is horrible about it is that when they do this clear cutting like this and create new edges, those new edges will fall apart because they're not strong enough. They're not used to being edges. They didn't form as edges. They formed as centers of the woods. And so the edges of my woods are probably going to come tumbling down more and more. And on the other side of my property was a field. And so that side is already, completely edged and has been for, God, 40 years at least that I know of. So that side is safe. But the new side, I'm a little concerned about that. And here we have Hurricane Florence hitting the coastline right around the South Carolina, North Carolina border, somewhere in that range. And they're saying instead of it sideswiping us, it's going to be a direct hit. And so the storm, despite the fact that I am all the way at the edge of South Carolina, the most inland edge, if you follow the borderline of South Carolina and North Carolina, it's north east in North Carolina and northwest of South Carolina. So, or is it the other way around, southwest and northeast? Anyways, it's along that borderline, and I live right at the border. Yeah, my sense of direction and my sense of time were kind of off, but kind of. That might be an understatement, y'all. They're very off. I have no sense of at all of time. None. People tease me that I'm going to be late to my own funeral, and hopefully I am. I don't really think that it's necessary for me to be on time for my funeral. I was not late for my airplane, but I was late for a train. So what can I say? I'm not real good with time, and I'm not very good with directions. So I use GPS for everything, despite the fact that I have lived in the same location for over 20 years, and even longer in the state. I've lived in this state since I was 16, going on 17. I had just turned 17, I guess. And I'm 54. So I should know my way around, right? But nowadays, I need my GPS because I have no sense of direction left. And then I'll be looking and I'll know where I'm at. And then the next second, everything looks kind of familiar, but completely not familiar. It's, one of these very weirdo kinds of things. Kind of like my memory used to be. I have a little bit of a memory again. I used to get to go to a brand new restaurant for months before I knew that I'd been there before. And it was always brand new to me. So, now I actually am remembering where I've been and what I've done, at least in part. And I can't put them in order. I can't tell you what I did Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but I can tell you that I did all this stuff this week, which I really haven't done much of anything except for walk on these fallen trees. I'm using them for my jungle gym. I play. That's how I stay on top of all the exercises, is I make them fun. And tandem walking is one of those awesome things for balance. So I thought, oh my gosh, can I tandem walk on this fallen tree? Let's see. And so that's what I've been doing. And so far, I've only rolled off of one and down one hill. It was all the same. But I went off balance on this tree because I was, you have to step over the branches and maybe there's another tree in your path. So you have to step over this stuff. And so I'm stepping over it and putting my foot down, and I went a little wobbly, and next thing you know, I'm rolling off. Now, when I was a kid in gymnastics and in diving, both. You learn how to fall. You learn balance. You learn how the physics of your body works. And these have been great things for me now. I mean, they were great for me then. And I was doing gymnastics up until the end of the school year because I used to substitute, and the kids loved it when I had PE classes. And we would, we weren't allowed to do much in the way of gymnastics. Schools and lawsuits there over an injury and stuff like that. So there was nobody cutting flips, and there was, nothing that the school deemed dangerous. But I would put the mats along, and we'd do our runs of cartwheels and handstands and back bends and all these different things, and of course the rolls. And the rolls are really important. And you can roll forwards, you tuck your head under and you got to tuck it way under, and then you can roll forwards, or you can roll on your side. So when I lost my balance on this tree, I knew that I needed to roll. That's what you do when you fall. You want to roll. You don't want to fall and hit hard. You want to land in a rolly position so that you're not getting hurt. And that's what I did. So I rolled, and because it was on a hill, I kept rolling until I got stuck by a tree. That was really fun. But I ended up with a few bruises, and then I ended up wandering through the woods and getting tangled in some briars, and that was really fun. So I think I've got my bruises and my briar cuts, enough for this month. I told a friend of mine in the UK that, a day without a bruise, if I have a day without a new bruise, then that's a day that I probably didn't do anything. Because even as good as I am, and I'm good, y'all, I'm good. But even as good as I am, I still have MS. I still bounce off of walls. I tease that I'm Tigger, and I bounce off of things. I try and cut the corner to go around from the hall into the living room, and bam, I've ran into a couch. Now, how much of that is balance and how much of that is vision being off, I really couldn't tell you. It's kind of one of those catch-22s, and it probably all comes into play anyways. But yeah, people see me and they think, well, your MS isn't bad. But that's because they aren't really seeing my MS, and they don't know me from before. They weren't here 6 years ago. They weren't here 5 years ago. They weren't here 4 years ago. They weren't even here 3 years ago. Because it wasn't until 3 years ago that I started making new friends and getting out. Because it took that long before I was able. And when I say able, I do mean able, because I couldn't walk, I could barely talk, I couldn't think, I was non-functioning, I was just here. And then the tumor that I had, as it started growing and growing and growing, my friend Sharon that I had made, and she's a good friend of mine, and she is really very blunt. She's from New York State, not the city, but the state, which is beautiful, by the way. And she's from this great state, and they're very blunt. They're very direct and to the point, and I gotta say, I really like that about her. And she was sitting on my front porch with me one day, and she said, "You're turning into a potato patty. You're turning into a potato." And it's because I could not think. ADHD to a massive extreme. The squirrel thing wasn't even a squirrel. It didn't take a squirrel. It could be nothing at all, and I'd be mid-word and forget what I was saying. And that was in part the tumor and all the pressure being put on my brain by this tumor. And so I was turning into this potato. And so I knew prior to the appointment, when I was told I'd need to have it taken out, that it was going to be taken out. But we just keep on going. But guys, I had something happen that was really disturbing this past week. Amongst groups of MSers, you would think that they would have compassion. You would think they would have the understanding that not everybody's symptoms act alike, and that not everybody's solutions for the same symptom work, because each of us are different. So we each have different triggers. And, I was talking about the itchiness. And oh my gosh, everybody was coming at me like I was a newbie with this and telling me, ice it, ice it, ice it. And when I told them I cannot ice it, because ice on me is a bad thing. I'm temperature change intolerant. Ice on me will set me into a frozen mode. And I was argued with, and I just said, well, thank you guys, and kind of got offline, because I'm not trying to be there and be ugly to anyone. But no, icing the itch isn't going to help somebody like me, because it will freeze me, even if it's just a brush pass. I'm much better off not touching that cold thing. I can just touch with one finger that I can't even feel. The couch, we have a leather couch, and I can just touch it, and my whole body will turn frozen. It doesn't matter that it was just for a second, because I was about to run into it, so I stuck my hand out there. It will freeze my whole body. And if a couch is going to do this, that is at the same temperature as the air, apparently, I guess, maybe. It's a leather couch, and we've got a heat pump, so we've got good air conditioning, and my husband keeps it at like 74 degrees, and I keep inching it up, and he'll inch it back down. But, that the couch being leather, it holds the cold really, really bad. And it's awful in the wintertime too. So never again will I have a leather anything. And so touching this couch freezes me. So what would an ice cube do? I'm not going to try the ice. But I do have other remedies, when it comes to itching. You've got this false sensation because your nerve signals are getting messed up. So you get this false sensation. And the false sensation is the itch in this case. And so you want to change that sensation. So I can use not a cold gel, but I use a defining gel just because it's really good for your skin, and it's really a thick gel. But a thick gel will change that sensation. Deodorant changes the sensation. Again, it's putting on something thick, and it's changing the sensation. But never ever scratch at it, because once you've scratched at it, that itching becomes even more intense, as if it's not intense enough, So you don't want to scratch it. But guys, remember, and this is my point, I want you guys to remember that while I'm giving you my tips, my suggestion, things that have worked wondrously well, I can speak, wonderfully well for me, may not be exactly what is going to work wonderfully well for you. You might have to tweak that. And so if you get a lot of opinions and a lot of different suggestions, then you have lots of different things to try. But don't expect that what works for one works for another. I also have a lot of friends who are into holistic medicine, the kind that is all natural. And I want to say something real quick about that too, because that keeps coming up. If all natural worked, if there was such a thing as curing yourself through all natural ways, then you probably wouldn't have MS. Okay? Because all natural ways is all we had. And then back in the 70s, I think it was, our first DMT came out. And then another, and now we've got a bunch of different choices to make. All natural does not work. Diet and exercise alone do not work. Smoking marijuana might make you feel better and help symptoms, but it does not cure you. None of these things are a cure. The DMTs are not a cure. But what they do that everything else does not do is they stop the inflammation and they stop all of what's going on and causing your MS to stay out of control. So had I known I had MS before I knew I had MS and been on a DMT, then maybe when it did hit me and I knew about MS, it would not have been so bad because it was already spread everywhere. And I was already on a very good diet for me, one that I'm still on. And I was already exercising all the time. I did gymnastics. I did wakeboarding. I did tubing. I did all the water sports activities and more. So diet and exercise alone aren't going to cut it. Please, 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 y'all. Please heed my warning. Take a DMT. It's for your future self. And if the first one doesn't work, try again. And keep trying till you find one that does. And my time is up. So I got to go. Love you guys. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, as always, smile big, smile often, laugh a lot, and most importantly, love yourself, your whole self, including your wacky MS side. So till next time, y'all have a great week. Bye.